with additional resources, what are some of the things you'll be doing, Commissioner?
Well, let me give you an example. Right in your district, we're going to be spending over $1 million with the Bed-Stuy Restoration Corporation for something called the New York City Justice Corps. And that's a program to serve about 125 young men each year who are coming out of jail or out of prison or are perhaps on probation, and to transition them into first subsidized employment, training, and then with some mentoring into private sector, unsubsidized employment. And this will enable us to grow that program to serve more people. And that's very important. You know, as I listened to Congressman Davis speak, it occurs to me that as an investment strategy, imprisonment is a terrible investment. There's no return on the investment, really. And as a society, we've been so willing to spend literally billions of dollars, something like $60 or $70 billion nationally, to imprison people. And here we're first beginning to spend $326 million, hopefully in fiscal 09, to invest in people, to teach them how to work, some people who perhaps have never worked before, and turn their lives around. And that is a critical opportunity, and I think an investment that will pay back far more than that investment in imprisonment ever has paid.
Yeah, you know, I'm happy to hear that you're working with restoration, and the leadership there is real strong. A guy by the name of Colvin Grannon, who's doing a fantastic job.
That's right. He and I met about 2 weeks ago. Very impressive.
Yeah, he really is doing a fantastic.
Right.
He turned that restoration around. Of course, I'm happy to hear that you working with him.
Very excited about that. Very excited about that.
Definitely. Let me ask this now. It costs approximately $7,000 to $8,000 to keep a youngster in school, and probably $35,000 to $40,000 to if the person's incarcerated. You know, how do we make the point here that we need to focus more on education? There's a correlation between education and serving time. I mean, how do we make that point?
We have strong evidence in the literature that education is one of the true ways to keep a child out of the juvenile justice system and to get a child into higher education or into a work program or into work. We know that once they've entered the criminal justice system, many of our systems do not have good education programs. In my system, the education program is not recognized as an education program, so children don't even get credit for that time. Can you imagine how disenfranchised youngsters feel about school and about work? It's a state issue, but the point is, I'm sure I'm not unique in that children don't get credit for that. But what we know is that employers look for people who have a high school diploma, a GED. They look for folks who have completed jobs programs, jobs trainings programs for the youngsters we see in juvenile justice in America. SAMHSA has data that shows that 68% of the boys and 70% of the girls have at least one diagnosed mental health disorder that is treatable. If we don't provide that treatment, the likelihood of them sitting in a classroom finishing school, going to a treatment program, participating and staying employed is reduced dramatically just because they have not had the treatment or the support that they need. Not that they're not educable, but that they don't have what they need in terms of comprehensive supports to take advantage of the opportunity for education.
And if I could, the return on the investment is so great until you can't even begin to measure it. I mean, we know, for example, that individuals who come out of prison and don't receive any help, no organized help, they just come out, 67% or 2/3 of them will have done what we call reoffend within a 3-year period. 53% of them will be reincarcerated. They'll be back in jail or prison. And I may have gotten hit in the head because some guy needed a little fix or something and couldn't get it.
Yeah. So your hospital bill should be added on to the cost.
Yeah, no, here I am, hospitalized, big hospital bill. My wife crying. Well, I guess she'd be crying. I hope she'd be crying. But one other point. I was in a church in South Bend, Indiana the other day, and I told them that every time I got a chance, because they were practicing reentry, they were practicing reentry at their church. A guy had just come home from prison, been in prison 10 years, and they had him come up front and talk, and everybody was hugging him and kissing him and telling him how happy they were to have him home and how they were going to help them. And I told them, I said, this is reentry. I mean, this is the kind of reentry that we need all over America. And they were doing it right there in South Bend, Indiana, a couple of Sundays ago.
Yeah, let me ask you, what about people coming out and being able to vote? Does this bill address this in any way?
Not really. We didn't attempt to address that issue because most people can vote after they've served their time. There's still a few states where they are prevented from voting, but most states, once you have served your time, then you can go and vote. There are no inhibiting factors. Now, there are many ex-offenders who don't know that they can vote, and so there's a tremendous need to educate them so that they are aware of the fact that they can vote.
Actually, if I may, Congressman, in New York City, in the city jails, people who are confined awaiting trial may still vote. People who have not been convicted of felonies may still vote. And we actually encourage voter registration from inside the jails in New York City. And we encourage their family members to vote because it's so important that this constituency have a voice. It's so important that the families of the men and women who find themselves imprisoned be heard about what it means to their lives to have these people that they love come back and have a chance to succeed. So it really is important that we create a constituency. And we encourage, for example, in New York City Department of Probation, we tell all of our probationers about what they need to do to register to vote. We encourage them to register to vote. I think that becoming part of the community means participating in the civic life of the community. It means taking an interest in what's going on around you, taking some responsibility for electing the leadership of your community, and one of your civic duties is to vote.
Right. Now, this bill actually, the reentry initiatives is there in terms of the bill, but how would you use that with youth? I mean, many times the person that you're dealing with has never had a job, and now they're coming out. How do you deal with a situation like that?
It affords us the opportunity to work with them around their interests and building skills towards employment. And it affords the opportunity to introduce them to the world of work. Part of their inexposure to work has to do with some of their not being willing to. We get the chance with some of these funds to have communities to introduce what exists in their communities as work opportunities, how you get there. The faith-based community is rich with people who work. So mentor-like relationships where young people can be exposed to things they might not be exposed to at home that are positive and that could positively influence them. If you look at the literature, what really works for young people is having a caring adult with a hand in the middle of their back so they can say, I can't do that today, Miss Burrell is coming, or I can't do that today, Mr. Horn is coming, and children are respectful of each other. So it helps them to comply with conditions of probation or parole. It helps them to comply with school rules or the rules for their treatment programs. So we have the opportunity through this to improve their outlook on work and to see opportunity in the work world. I'm not, big on just having a fast food job. I want them to fix the elevators and build the buildings and design the computer systems. These children are incredibly bright, but not redirected. We can provide an education and a work experience for any child whose education and work is important to us.
Right now, yep. Go ahead. You were saying.
Well, I'm just going to say many of them obviously can seriously add,
yes,
subtract.
Count.
They know how to count the money that they generate on the streets peddling drugs. I mean, and they also know how to put these elaborate systems together in terms of who's in charge, who's watching down here, who's looking out for the police, what kind of signals to use. So they have a lot of ingenuity and creativity, and they just need help. I mean, to kind of channel it in the right direction.
I agree completely. I think what